Mama. Welcome to the Mrs. Mummy PhD podcast. I am your host, Dr. Michelle Gibbs, and this podcast exists to help scholarly mamas like you to achieve your life and academic goals without sacrificing what matters most. Here, we're changing the overwhelm, juggle, struggle narrative around what it means to be a mama on an academic journey to one of empowerment, fulfillment, and purposeful success. So how do we successfully navigate these journeys? Well, first, we need the space to embrace this unique blend. Let's begin by saying yes to creating a life that feels as good on the inside as it looks on the outside, because that's when we truly become purposefully whole. So get ready for the most non-traditional, unconventional, and revolutionary approach to PhD motherhood, because one thing I have learned over my many years of experience on this journey is that if you want something different, you have to do something different. But you must be brave enough to think differently first. So, Mama, are you in? Fabulous. Let's begin. These are our journeys of becoming. From burnout to breakthrough. What if the breaking point you fear could actually be the doorway to your most authentic success? Imagine being told you have to choose, either be a good mother or pursue your dreams. Now, imagine saying no. Today's guest didn't just refuse to choose. She turned her own burnout into a blueprint for women who want it all. And she's proven that success does not have to come at the cost of your well-being or your family. Today's episode will challenge everything you thought you knew about having it all. Hey Mama, welcome back to the podcast. I am so happy you've chosen to spend this time with us today. And today I am so thrilled to welcome Unyime Oguta, a transformational speaker and coach who helps high-achieving working mamas and professionals to create the space, time, and energy they need to chase their dreams without sacrificing their health or their families along the way. And here's what makes her perspective so unique. Despite being a gifted speaker who lights up rooms and transforms lives, Unyime needs days to recharge after social interactions, even though talking to people is actually what she loves doing. And it's this very understanding of her own needs and limits that makes her work so powerful. She doesn't just talk about work-life harmony, she lives it. After experiencing burnout herself while pursuing her second degree, Unyime refused to accept the narrative that women have to choose between academic success, career achievements, and being present for their families. Today, she's here to share her journey and to show us how we can rewrite these rules for ourselves. So whether you're pursuing your PhD, juggling research with family life, or simply trying to find your footing in academia while maintaining your well-being, this conversation is for you. Let's dive in. Welcome to the show, Unyime. Welcome to the show. I'm so happy to have you here. We've wanted to do this for a long time, so I'm so happy that you are finally on the Mrs. Mummy PhD podcast. Welcome.
Thanks, Michelle. I am so honored and excited for our conversation.
Yay, let's get started. So, would you like to just share, just something about yourself before we actually get into it?
Where do I start? That's kidding.
That's a big question. That's a really big question.
I will start for the purpose of your audience, because I know most of your audience are probably moms at that stage where they're probably pursuing, either graduate or postgraduate education, or maybe even first-time education, going back to school or just finishing up. I am a mom, I am a wife, and I work full-time leading a team. And I recently graduated from a master's program in public health. But before that, I was a mom who experienced burnout while pursuing my second degree. So I went to school to get my second degree many, many years ago. And at that time, I was pregnant with my second daughter. And even before that, I remember people just telling me that I was too ambitious. I was, looking for too much. I needed to calm down and settle down, that it was a lot, and people couldn't do that. And those are the stories that I took going into this program. So you can imagine how I ended up with burnout not too long after that. I was working full time at that time. I think probably about 40 hours a week, but I was in a high stress position. I was a quality assurance auditor. And so a lot of reading, lots of interpersonal things, and having to navigate that while being pregnant and raising a toddler. And things got really intense really fast. Over the period of a year, I found my hair was falling out in different places. I have a lot of hair. I'd never experienced hair loss before, but my hair was falling out. I could barely keep food in. And I remember going to my doctor over and over, and we did so many tests. And at some point, she just said, I don't know what's going on. And she said, I think you have IBS. IBS is irritable bowel syndrome. And for people who have irritable bowel syndrome, it's a syndrome. There's no one specific thing that says definitively this is what you have. And so the only way to find out was for me to get a colonoscopy. And I asked her for a week. I never went back because during that time, it occurred to me that something was off. And I kept getting the nudge to check my stress and check my stress. And it turns out I was experiencing the side effects of chronic unmanaged stress for over many, many years that I just never paid attention to. And this is something that we now know is called burnout. But back then, my doctor just said, you know what? You have to do something about it. It's either you do something or I'm going to put you on medication. And that moment, I chose to do something about my stress, which took me on a journey of recovery to a place where I realized that as moms, it is so important for us to not put away our dreams, but to recognize that our dreams are going to have to ask us for a lot more than we think we can handle. And the time that you take to take care of yourself and prioritize your goals is equally, if not more important than the time and energy and effort that you take to take care of other people and show up in your role, whatever that role is outside of you just being an individual. And here we are today. That's the foundation of my work that I do with other moms.
I love that. And you know what? I think it's a very common experience, especially for high achieving women and mums, that the self-care is the first thing to go, right? The self-love, the goals, the personal stuff is the first thing to go when we are juggling lots of things and managing many roles. And, I really love how you were able to spot that in yourself, because quite often we don't even recognize it in our own selves. We can point it out in other people. We could be like, you should look after yourself. You should take care of yourself. But are we doing it for ourselves? Is the question we need to ask. So I know that you said you experienced that burnout while you were pursuing your master's. And like I said, it's something that we all can really relate to. But could you share with us what were some of those early warning signs that you picked up on that you would now recognize, but maybe at that time you might have overlooked or missed them?
That's a great question. I would say the biggest one that popped right into my head when you asked that question was this feeling of being rushed. I think that one is common whether you experience burnout or not. As moms who are juggling a lot of things, there is this just an innate need that we're always in a rush. We're always trying to get somewhere. There's so many things that we need to get done. And I remember just feeling that way as soon as I started the degree. I came in as a mature student, so I was already, way older, was already working with years of experience. And so there was that need to make sure that it was worth it. So there was the rush. I was always feeling rushed. There were moments where I was tired. My brain, almost like a brain fog. I couldn't think properly. I was forgetting things. I couldn't sleep well. My digestion was shot. I could barely keep food in. So appetite loss. Those were the things that I really think about that were kind of early at the beginning, where it was just like here and there. And, as moms, I pushed it on the side. Yeah, it's just, it'll be fine once I get to rest. But the rest never came. And so just think about all of that compounding over time.
Yeah, yeah. Oh my goodness. So totally relatable. And it kind of highlights why it's important for us to really pay attention to not just, like you said, the goals and the looking after other people and looking after our mental health, but also our physical health and being in touch with our bodies and really paying attention to the changes that are happening and whether we can link that to any circumstantial things and whether we can actually do something about it. Because it's one thing to kind of notice, but it's another thing to take action and do something about it, which it sounds like you did. We'll come to that. So many mums in academia struggle with what you call the permission to choose me. How did you navigate that mindset shift from seeing self-care as selfish to seeing it as necessary, especially within the context of cultural and societal expectations?
It's a very broad question. I still think that self-care is selfish, but not in the way that a lot of us believe. So there's something I teach my private clients, and I've done some master classes on this, where the self is in uppercase letters and we have a hyphen ISH. Because when you really think about the idea of self-care, it's not, going to the spa and getting a massage. Those things are great. But the way that I teach self-care, it starts with the mind, it starts with the body, it starts with the values. Many of us are not taught that as women growing up, right? It's always an external thing that you do. Take care of other people. That's how you find your value. That's how you find your worth. And I flip that script because when we get to a place where we recognize that in order for me to take care of myself, I have to start with me first, right? I have to take care of my mental health. What are the thoughts that I have about myself? How am I feeling about myself? How do I then behave as a result of how I think and feel about myself? And it pours out into other people. This is why when we come from that perspective, there's not a lot of resentment. There's not a lot of expectations of other people because we've already filled our cups. Many of us think filling our cup is about going and buying things, going to the spa. Those are great things, but your cup can be filled physically. It's still to pour into other people versus can I fill me and then in my overflow, pour out. So when I decided that I was going to give myself the permission, it was recognizing that that mattered. And coming to that realization was painful because I've lived all my life believing differently. And so a lot of cognitive dissonance happened, right? I had this value of I'm important, I'm worthy of being taken care of. And at the same time, my family needs me, my children need me, my spouse. And there are all these other roles that I play outside of my home and my career that I have to fulfill. So really getting into that space and recognizing that the society tells me I have to choose, but I don't want to choose. I want to do it all, realizing I can't. And then telling myself, how do I make it work? How do I make it work means I don't have to be the one to do all the things. Can I step up as a leader? And that's when it really hit me. As women, we don't think that we have that capacity. We think about leadership in the perspective of people in the boardroom or going and signing a check for money, but you are a leader. Every one of us, especially if you're a mom in a family, you are a leader. It's not about a title, right? It's not about the title of leadership, but it's about the embodiment of how do I show up and lead my life as a woman who wants to wear all of these hats well. And that means I had to get out of managing my life. I had to get out of authority and power and bringing down the punishment to, okay, what is the vision that I have? How do I want my children's relationships with me to look like? What do I want the experience of my husband's relationship to me to feel like? What do I want the experience of my colleagues and my team members? What do I want that to look like? I had to decide that first. And when I got to that space, I realized, you know what? I'm going to have some boundaries because I don't want to be overstretched. I don't want to be stressed out and overwhelmed. I'm going to have some tough conversations. And then the work really began because I had to learn how to do that. I was just so used to doing everything. So I had to learn how to have boundaries. I had to learn how to teach people how to treat me, coming because I had already filled up myself. So there was nothing that I was looking for. I wasn't seeking their acceptance. I wasn't seeking their validation. I was seeking a partnership of let's come together. This is where I'm going, and I really want you to come along. And some people didn't come along, and that was okay too. But it's a lot of thinking and strategizing, and also knowing that there's going to be loss and allowing myself to sit in the pain of that loss of what I thought was. But because I've shown up in this way, some people just couldn't handle it. And it's not that they were bad, it's just we're different. And some of the friendships I lost, then I've recently, some of them have come around, some haven't, and that's okay. But again, it was that giving the permission, because sometimes we're waiting for other people to tell us it's okay to do that. But it never comes. And if anyone listening now, you've been waiting, it's not going to come until you give yourself permission. And the beautiful thing about that is when you give yourself that permission, then you create space for everyone else to level up and come and meet you at that level. Some people are waiting on you. Your children are waiting on you. Your spouse might be waiting on you. I always laugh at my husband because he wanted to do a master's way before I did. I wasn't even interested. And as soon as I decided I was going to go to school, I was done. And now he's in school. And it's so funny because, again, it's taking up that leadership and not waiting and saying, what is my value? What's the vision? And how can I bring these people along with me? If many of us could do that and give ourselves that permission, yes, it's going to be hard because then you're going to have to unlearn some things. But the result, it's just a very, very beautiful life that makes you excited to wake up to, I think.
Oh, I love that. So good. So good. Like if I could have, just pinch every single word and hold on to it, I would have, because it was so good. And I think one of the things I love that you said there was about self-leadership, because, and this is something that I've been contemplating making a podcast episode about, that leadership of any kind, particularly in the home, begins with self-leadership. Like you cannot lead without being able to lead yourself. And that, like you said, doesn't mean managing. Managing and leading are two different things. But being a leader means being that visionary. And, I love how you've kind of articulated that in the context of motherhood, that as moms, we are leaders of ourselves, but also of our homes, of our families, of our kids. They want them to look at us and see a leader. And that means, setting those boundaries. It means showing them what self-love looks like, what self-care looks like, so that they can emulate that too. This isn't about, like you said, punishing and being authoritative, but it's about being the example, really, of what good self-leadership is all about. So you mentioned there about this what I call a false dichotomy of having to choose between being a good mom with a successful marriage or having a successful career. So what practical strategies have you developed to challenge this way of thinking?
First of all, I just don't believe that you have to choose. I started pushing back after I experienced burnout the second time. So I've experienced burnout twice. And I think it was for a reason. Because when you hear people talk about burnout a lot in the current climate that we're in, many people tend to think it's about work. The second time I experienced burnout, I was on maternity leave. I was not working. I was at home taking care of a baby, and I still experienced burnout. And the more I thought about that, I thought, you know what? There is this idea that if you just figure out work-life balance, then your life will be perfect. And so I have a big belief that that is a scam. It's a lie. It does not exist. It does not exist. Think about everyone who talks about work-life balance. Who is it always targeted at? The moms. It's always the moms. If you can figure out the time management, if you can figure out, how to balance all of these things, then everything will be fine. And so for me, pushing back looks like not having that belief. It doesn't exist in my world. There is no work-life balance. There's integration, there's harmony, and it's a very flexible flow. There are ebbs and flows, and I'm flexible enough to follow through with that. So that just released me from every idea of maybe it's time blocking, maybe it's this. No. Thinking about time management, I don't do time management. I feel like I'm just breaking all the rules here. I don't do time management again, because management, we're assuming that we have control over our time. When you're a mom, you don't have control over your time.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Yeah.
No. And so what I focus on is the energy and capacity lens.
Mm-hmm.
What is my energy today? What is my capacity? And I've tested this out with myself. I've tested it out with my clients, where we look at time very differently, because yes, the world teaches us that you have time in 24 hours, but really time is not bound by 24 hours. Time is boundless. And if we can start to see time that way, then we take away the pressure of, I've got 10 things I need to get done today, and if I don't get it done, then I can't go to bed. I used to be that woman. I used to be the one staying up at 11 p.m. washing dishes, because if I didn't clean my kitchen in order to have a clean kitchen in the morning, then I couldn't sleep. I released myself from that. Why? Because I wanted my experience of life to be peaceful. I wanted my experience of life to be one where my children come home and it feels like home.
Mm-hmm.
It's not mom stressed out. She's not in the mood. We can't make jokes right now. I want my husband's experience of me and our home to be of peace and a place that he wants to come. And so when we start to think about our values, that's what shapes how we approach all of these things. What do you value? And maybe for somebody else, it's, structure and all of that. Not that I don't have structure, but I know who I was when I was bound by all of that. And the person I am now is totally different. So there's the work-life balance, there is the time management. And then the third thing I want to share is just being unapologetic about who I am and how I want to show up in the world. I talk to a lot of women who they have who they want to be, and they have who they present themselves to be. And every time those two don't align, we're always going to be in conflict with ourselves. And we'll always find ourselves going back and forth. We take the training, we don't do the work. We talk to somebody about our issues, we don't do the work. We complain, but we're not willing to change.
Mm-hmm.
It's because we are in conflict with ourselves. And until we decide that this is who I want to be, and I'm going to present her to other people, we're always going to be in conflict. So when we're thinking about presenting her to other people, all of our fears will come up, right? People are going to be mad at me. They will reject me. They're going to tell me I'm too proud. And you know what? What if they say all that? So what? So what? You have to answer that question for yourself. Yes, if someone tells you, oh, you're too proud, how can you respond to them? Because the fact that you're thinking about this means you're not proud. You're just afraid that the relationship is going to have an issue. And that's okay. Sometimes we need those conflicts for us to really show up authentically. And that's fine. But we have to be unapologetic about that.
I love that. I love that. And I think you're so right in the sense that we have to first get to know and love that person who we want to become, that person who we are really, and appreciating her with all the flaws and with all the comments from other people or judgments or what have you. And like you said, show up authentically and unapologetically as her and be proud of her. Be proud of what she's accomplished. Be proud of the journeys that she's on. I just love that so much, so much. And like you said, it's challenging these stereotypes of that we have to choose or that we have to be doing it all, because it just doesn't work. And I love that you have released yourself from from this, everything needs to be, because you know what? And I'm telling you, I'm from Barbados, okay? So we are very, there's certain cultural expectations there about how you should run your house and how you should keep it a certain way and all that. And people just don't understand when you've taken this approach of, actually, I choose peace today. I choose peace. That may mean I'm going to bed with things not done, but I do not want to burn myself out trying to do all the things all the time for all the people. It just is not going to work. And so if for whatever reason you've got to let go of some of those expectations, standards, whatever that you are killing yourself over, that's okay. It's okay, for the sake of peace, for the sake of rest, for the sake of well-being. It's okay to let go of those things. And I know that as someone who has identified as a perfectionist and a people pleaser, how did you adapt those traits, especially when you were doing your master's in academia, where perfectionism is often rewarded? How did you manage to adapt those traits to create a more sustainable approach to success?
That's a great question. And I will tie it back to the response that I gave earlier, because part of it was just letting go of the expectations, right? So for me, and everyone comes into academia at different levels. For me, I've already had almost a 20-year career. I'm not new in my experiences. I went to do my master's because I care about public health. It's something I've always loved. And I knew there were skills that I would gain. There are people that I would meet through that experience. And so because that was my goal, things like being the best didn't really matter, because I was focused on, what am I here to learn? What are the skills that I'm here to learn? And what are the relationships that I'm here to cultivate, to nurture, people that I could potentially work with together in the future or connect about questions? That was the priority. So I wasn't spending time trying to memorize everything that my professor did. Was I disciplined in making sure that I knew when the assignments were due and tests and all of those things? Absolutely. Organization matters. When I got into the class, I wasn't trying to show how much I knew. I was there with a learning spirit, knowing that I'm here to learn and also contribute to the society.
Yeah.
As a high achiever, you know this, many of us, we pride ourselves in being the best, in being the top, in getting it, and just pushing and knowing that absolutely there's nobody else who can say that, they've done what we've done. And this is great. It rewards a lot of us when we're growing up, especially in the education system, right? I was the kid that my parents were like, if you come in first position, I'll buy you a bike. And after 3 years, my parents were like, we're not buying bikes anymore. We're done.
Yes, I can relate to that.
Right? So we've been rewarded for behaving that way, for pushing ourselves to be the best.
Yeah.
And I had to remind myself that's not the priority here. So with regards to navigating that and while working and helping my family, I was also coaching, because I have my coaching practice and working full time. I had to decide what were the days that were school days for me. What did that look like? I made sure that my family was involved in my planning. So I had a conversation. My family knew when I applied. They knew when I got in. Beginning of the school year, I'm like, okay, kids, school's starting. I'm going to have classes. These are things that are coming up for me. So here's how I would love for us to work together. Can we all work together so that mom gets to do school and she's going to be done? And then we go back to what our schedule is. So when the school season was on, our schedule was different from, summer and taking vacation and holidays. But it again, going back to that leadership, bringing my family along, letting my kids see. And there were days when, because they're children, they still complained, well, you're studying too much. Yes, I understand that. However, this is only for a short time. Can we work around it? Right. And so it's really understanding that the children don't really get what you're doing sometimes. And it's okay. It's not against them. It's bringing them along to understand this is where we are right now. The journey's not going to be forever. So that was a big thing that I found really helpful, just having my kids on my side. And of course, their dad was very supportive, stepping in with our family, we already have duties. So everyone kind of chips in, whether you're in school or not. So that was already something that was working for us. It just required more of my husband stepping in, because I had to do this, do my master's or study and also coach. So he stepped in more. And that meant our children didn't really engage in a lot of extracurricular activities because, again, focusing on my capacity, this is only what I could do. So everyone did one thing and they all did the same thing.
One-stop shop.
One-stop shop. So we all did the same thing. That way this is when this is happening. And sometimes it would be multiple times in the day, but we knew that day was dedicated to the children.
Yeah.
And that way, everyone just still got to do their thing. And after that, now they're doing multiple things and we have capacity to do that.
So important. So key, isn't it?
It is. It's so important. But again, it's recognizing that this is something I want to do. If you really want to do and to make it work, how can we make it work? Which goes back to that permission, because sometimes we want our family to be okay, to say, yes, you can go to school. Yes, you can do this. But they don't understand what that's going to take. And if we don't take the time to give ourselves permission, giving yourself the permission brings up all of the potential issues that could occur. And then you start to solve for those things. Once that happens, it's easy to have the conversation with whether it's your partner or maybe you're taking care of your parents or whatever. It's easier to have those conversations because then you can help them. Sometimes they ask the questions, sometimes they push back because they know things will change. They just don't know by how much. And so that fear causes them to push back. But it's not that they don't support you. Sometimes, maybe in people's cases, it could be different. Most times I find it's not that they don't support, it's that they don't understand. And their fear of what could happen is what causes them to push back. But if you give yourself that permission and start thinking from that leadership lens, what's the timeline? What's the focus? How can we work together? Then you can have a better conversation with them to help them and bring them along that journey.
So true. So true. And I think, what you said there about really getting them on board and helping them to understand what and why it is you're doing what you're doing, it helps so much in having that open communication, even with the kids. Like, I am really open with my kids, especially when I was doing my PhD. I was so open with them. They knew what I was doing. Of course, I didn't understand the ins and outs of the research itself, but they were informed as to the level of work I had to put into that. And I think it really helped them to appreciate the journey that it was. And of course, having that open conversation with my husband as well, and really advocating for my needs and what help I needed, it really helped me to make the journey easier because people were on board. They understood what I was doing. It wasn't like I was taking away from, I was doing something that they wanted to support me in. And I think that was really important to get that support and that buy-in from them as well. So thinking about boundaries, which you talked about earlier, could you share a specific example of how you created boundaries around your academic pursuits when you were studying for your master's while also maintaining those meaningful family connections? What was your biggest challenge in regards to these boundaries, and what was your biggest breakthrough?
I started my master's in the pandemic.
Oh, wow.
For context. And we were all home, right? Many of us were working from home, studying from home. Kids were going to school. Everybody did the same thing in our homes. So I think that for me was the time when I really had to push myself as someone who tends to lean into people pleasing to be very stringent about the boundaries that I had. And so one of them was whenever my door was closed for studying, sometimes I would coach in there. Nobody come.
Yeah.
If it's not an emergency, nobody's dying, right?
Yeah.
If you haven't tried to solve it in many ways that you can explain to me, then you wait till I'm done.
Yeah.
And that one was a huge one because I think my daughter, she's 6 now, but then she was, I think, about 1 or 2.
Mm-hmm.
So she still needed that, mom, and can you
Yeah.
do this? And I want to show you this. And I had to remind them. There were times when they would come knock the door and I'd say, hey, we have to go back to our agreement. What was our agreement? And I found soon enough that even that was not enough. So sometimes it felt like they would come down, and because the door is there, maybe they hadn't seen me. It felt like I wasn't wanting to connect. And so I remember having a conversation with my oldest daughter, and that was what she shared with me. And that really hurt because that was not my intention. So coming and exploring why I had that boundary in place and really thinking about, was it serving me and the people that I wanted in the way that I wanted it to? It served me, but there was a bit of a misunderstanding with the people. So then I had to work through conversation. Okay, if I'm there in the morning and you just woke up from sleep, I will acknowledge that you're knocking the door. I'm happy to come say good morning. We hug, talk a little bit, and off you go. And that's how we solve that. With work, because again, I had school, I had to work, report at work. There were just some things I didn't take on. So if I had a project and I work in an environment where things are constantly turning, you're always asked to do something and priorities shift and change a lot. I was very clear on this is what I'm focused on. And if something came across my table, that was not part of the original plan. It was me advocating for myself with my boss, having a conversation. These were the priorities. Which of these would you love me to take off the table? And it wasn't out of, spite or anger or anything. It was just, this is the capacity that I had. The biggest boundary I would say also had to do with me. As a high achiever and, leaning towards perfectionism, there is that I can't be done until I'm done, right? With the studying, if I hadn't finished reading. And so I found myself wanting to go back to who I was when I experienced burnout the first time, staying up late. And I had to catch myself. No, we're not going to do that. We're going to close the book and we're going to go to bed. And I think that was probably, personally speaking, that was the boundary with myself that was hard because I had to change from, I know what I had experienced in the past. I was not going to repeat that cycle. And I felt like this was a full circle moment for me to create a new narrative. So I had to be really intentional with myself to say, if I'm going to study, I'm going to focus on studying. And if it's not done, we're going to go to sleep. When we wake up, we'll deal with it. And wherever we are, we can work with that. I remember one assignment because I had to go for a work travel and I wasn't done. And it was due that night. And I remember just emailing my professor to say, you know what? This thing is not going to come in. I really want to make it work. However, work is really taking a lot of my time. How can we work something out? I would really love your support. And he was so generous to say, gave me an extension. If I hadn't given myself those boundaries, I would have just, forced myself, even though I had traveled and I was running on, tiredness and wanting to sleep so I could get back to work, I would have forced myself to push my limit versus trying to figure out how to create a solution.
Mm-hmm.
And that really opened my eyes to seeing, you know what, if we have boundaries and we know these boundaries are to support us, sometimes it's not about moving the boundary. Sometimes it's how can I work within the boundary to help myself. And I think that was such a beautiful experience for me because I came through that the experience and I didn't have any issues. It just felt so peaceful.
But you know
Not
what?
like it was the first time.
What that made me think about was this idea that when you have boundaries, that you hear people talking about it all the time. You need to have boundaries, you need to have boundaries. And you have the boundaries and you feel this, I don't know, like they are absolutely rigid, immovable, inflexible. There's no way around it. And then what ends up happening with our perfectionist, high achieving, overachieving, overworking, people pleasing selves is that, like you said, we work ourselves to burnout trying to maintain these new boundaries that we've set. And I think what you highlighted is that while boundaries are very important, and don't get me wrong, I have loads of boundaries as well, and they're just certain lines that I'm not going to be crossed. But I love myself enough to say, look, how can I work around this if I don't think it's possible to meet it? And having the courage to ask for help, or ask for an extension, or ask to move a meeting, or ask to just shift things so that you can still get the thing done is really required when we are juggling lots of hats and things are constantly moving. Like you said earlier, we don't even have control of our time as mums, right? And yet we fixate on these boundaries. We fixate on these rigid schedules that keep us caged and keep us, in bondage. And really it's about freeing ourselves and inviting that peace. And sometimes all that requires is a little bit of courage to say, well, two things: courage to ask for the support, ask for the help, ask for the flexibility and advocate for ourselves, but also to love ourselves enough to give ourselves permission to move the boundary or to shift things a little bit and be flexible. And I love what you said at the very beginning of this episode about things ebbing and flowing. And whether that's something at home, whether that's something in your academic journey, whether that's something in work, but really just recognizing that flexibility is so key for us as mums, to not hold ourselves so tightly to standards that we cannot keep. And well, we can keep if we burn ourselves out to keep it. But that's the whole point. We don't want to do that. So really loving ourselves enough to be self-compassionate when we don't always meet the target. We don't always, hit the mark, and it's okay.
Yeah. I have one thing that I want to say, because
Yeah.
I'm hearing you reflect back, and there's this perceived need to control. So we have this perceived or this idea that we can be in control of things. And I think that's where most of it stems from, right? If I can control it, then I can, feel calm. Have you ever seen someone press things down and they're calm? No. All of the energy is trying to keep the thing from breaking.
Yeah.
And so with what we're sharing here, and the thought that I want the listeners to really get is, we don't have control over things in life.
No.
The only thing you have control over is in how you think about yourself, how you feel about yourself, in how you act as a result of how you think and feel. If you can hold on to that and over teach yourself how to respond from that place, then things get to feel a lot easier.
Yeah.
Having the boundaries, organizing your time, all of these things start to feel a lot easier because you're not trying to control the outcome, but you're controlling you and how you show up to whatever happens. And that means today I could get one thing done and I feel happy. Tomorrow I get 5 things done, I feel happy. I don't feel less worthy because I did one thing versus 5.
Oh, so good. Oh, so powerful. And, these are the things that we go through as high achieving women. These are some of the realities of being a high achiever. And another reality of that is the physical toll that chronic stress takes on us, and it often sneaks up on high achieving women, right? We don't see it coming. So what are some of the signs of overwhelm that you are so much more aware of now that may not be obvious to others? And what's your advice for women who are dismissing these signals as part of their academic journey or part of their working mum life?
Going back to what I said earlier, when you start feeling yourself feeling rushed, there's something happening.
Yeah.
When you notice that you're feeling impatient, when you notice that you're snapping at people, when you do things and you're like, oh, I can't believe I did that. Start to pay attention. There's something sneaking up. And I know that life can get really busy, but we want to be able to watch how often we love telling people how busy we are. I want us to start to watch how often you tell people, I'm just so busy, I never get time. Because on a deeper level, this feeds our sense of our need to be wanted. It feeds that need of, oh, I'm important. People can't do without me. And that's okay. It's okay to admit it. I admit it all the time. I even find myself sometimes catching myself. I'm like, that's not happening, right? But it's noticing these things and being aware.
Yeah.
That awareness is so important. When you start to find yourself snapping at people or being impatient, ask yourself, what is really going on here? What are the expectations I'm having of them and maybe myself too? What are those expectations that are not being met? Are they realistic? Or is it just based on a belief that I'm trying to buy into? Is it based on the way that I want other people to see me? It's important for us to start paying attention to those things. So that on a physical sense, and of course, some people feel overly tired. You might find that you're forgetting things. You might find that you are restless. That's a big one for a lot of high achievers. Again, because we're so used to go, 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 we're restless. Notice your discomfort with peace. That's a big one.
Big one. Yes.
Notice how uncomfortable you are with not having anything on your calendar, or we're doing something and someone's like, let me help you with that. And they help you. Notice how uncomfortable you feel.
Yeah.
That'll tell you something, that your body is wanting to feed off of, the cortisol, the adrenaline that comes from you being the one doing that. Start to address those things. So the advice is start to address those things. Become aware. When you're aware, don't push it to the side. Don't say, oh, I'm going to get to it. Why? When do you intend to get to it?
Yeah.
Can you give me a timeline? And are you going to show up and keep your word at that time? Because a lot of this has to do with us. Again, going back to that permission for yourself, we're always thinking our families would, if they don't need me anymore, then things will be better. If your kids don't need you, you're going to find something else to do. That's the truth. I've seen this over and over with the women that I've coached. I've seen it with myself. And so you really want to start addressing those things, whether it be getting support with like a coach or a therapist or a counselor, whether it be asking for help, whether it be starting to speak up about your boundaries and saying no. If you're someone with people-pleasing tendencies, this can feel like death to you. So start small. What are some things that you can start doing, even with yourself at home, right? If you're someone who is used to staying up late and scrolling on social media, can you start having boundaries with yourself to say at 10 o'clock or whatever time feels convenient for you, I'm going to go to bed, and honor that over and over again. Tell yourself no over and over again. It starts to teach your body, right? Your nervous system, that saying no is okay.
Yeah.
Saying no is not going to kill you. Saying no is safe because it's important for us. Start with little things and then build up your capacity to do that. This is also something somebody can help you with, but little things like that. Because I know sometimes we always want the big thing that we need to bring out the planner and the calendar. And I don't work that way because I just feel like that's even adding to the overwhelm.
Yeah.
So let's start with the different thing. Build awareness. Start to keep word to yourself. This is building self-trust. When you keep your word, you're building self-trust. When you're able to trust yourself, you can follow through on everything else, whether it's boundaries, whether it's speaking and having difficult conversations. But that's not going to happen if you haven't built that within yourself first. And then ask people for feedback. I'm not saying ask them if, your work is valuable or whether you're worthy. No one can tell you that. That's already determined the moment you were born. Just because you're here, you're worthy, you're valuable. That's the end of the story. But you can ask people for feedback. Here, this is how I would love for our relationship to look like. What am I doing? Or what do you think I need to do differently that can help you support me in that? And have a conversation with people.
Yeah.
That's going to help you to start having those boundaries and getting this work started for yourself.
Amazing. Amazing. So you work with ambitious women who often face really high expectations from multiple directions. As we have mentioned, their lofty academic goals, their careers, their family members, and most notably themselves. How do you distinguish between expectations that serve growth and those that are simply draining your energy?
Always going back to what's the vision, right? One thing I do when I work with people is really understanding the seasons of life. I think if we all adopted working with seasons, that's how nature works, right? The animals, the plants, everything works like that. Humans try to work by work hours, time. It doesn't always work. So I always figure out, what is the season of my life? Is this a growth season? Is this a season where we're just pausing? There's not a lot of growth. We're just kind of coasting. Is this a season where I'm releasing a lot of things? So almost like winter or fall season for those who have, 3 seasons. We have 4 in Canada or in where I live. And so what season is it for you? Because those will help you determine the expectations. And so when a client comes to me and they have all these goals, we go back to, what is the vision for your life? Does this align with the vision you want? Does this align with your values? If it does, what season is it for you right now? I recently had one client who I helped her with a career pivot, and she got a senior executive role. And within 3 months, she had an opportunity to lead another location. So then she would direct 2 locations instead of 1. And it sounded so great on paper. She's very go-getter, wanting it. It really felt like, yeah, this is the path that I want. However, she was in a season where her children were very young. One of them was then experiencing, a lot of mental health challenges. And then her husband was also in a job transition. So we put it through that lens. Is this the right season for you? Once we went through that, she realized, what? I just got to a place where my children are feeling like I'm connected back to them. I just got to a place where work is no longer the priority. My family is a priority. I think this is a season that I just want to coast. And that was a hard decision for her. She had to say no to that opportunity. But it wasn't from a place of, well, it's too much, it's heavy. No, it was from an informed, detailed reasoning to her brain. Because what happens if we make rash decisions is you didn't answer your brain's questions. And so your brain is going to keep asking like a little toddler, just constantly checking you. So you want to take your time, answer those questions, and then you share what you want to share. Now, when we talk about the way that we'll know whether it's draining our energy, it's very simple. We'll know. Sometimes you'll feel it in your body. Sometimes you'll notice that it's starting to push against your values. Anything that pushes against the values, it's going to drain your energy because you're spending so much time to convince yourself that it's not against your values, but
Yeah.
Right. And so that one is always very easy. I do a lot of work with the nervous system when I'm working with people. We get in touch with our body, even people who don't know what it feels like to be in their body. I teach them how to do that because we are so blessed as women to have this body that speaks to us. And the more we can pay attention and trust that we have that wisdom within us and cultivate the ability to be one with the body, to listen to her wisdom, things like this get to be easy.
That is so true. And I love what you said about recognizing the season that you're in, and also the fact that that changes, right? Is so important, because for mamas who are navigating PhD journeys or academic journeys, one of the things that I have realized in my own reflection, my own experience, is the person you are at the beginning of a journey like that, especially if it's, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years of your life that you're on that journey. The person you are at the beginning of that journey is not the person you are at the end of the journey. And the goals you had at the beginning may not be the goals you have at the end. And also, like you said, life goes through seasons, and you may be in a season at the end of it which completely changes where you thought you were going to be, where you thought you were going to go from there. And so I think it's really important, particularly during those transition periods, the beginning of something new, the end of something that you've been doing for a long time, to really get in tune with you as a person, your goals, your values, what you want, your body, your feelings. Really get in touch with that and understand how has this person changed? How has this experience changed? How is the season I'm in right now? How is this different from where I thought I was going to be? And how does that change the goals, the aspirations, the actions that I take in this season? And so I really am happy that you've highlighted that, because I think that's something that our listeners really do struggle with, thinking that these sky high expectations that were at the beginning of this academic journey, they must be the same at the end of it. And it's definitely not the case. We need to be open to that growth within ourselves while we're on the journey, and how that changes things for us.
Mm-hmm. I love what you just shared there, because it's so true. We have this idea that the growth is going to be linear.
Yeah.
But then we forget that we live in a world where we're interacting with other people, and things are happening, not just within your immediate circle, but globally.
Yeah.
Things change.
Yeah.
And so how do we adapt? And it's so important for us to remain flexible, nimble.
Yes.
Very nimble,
yes.
But also remembering there's a vision, there's a goal that we're getting to. Sometimes the way there could look very different.
So true.
Depending on
So true. And so before we end our conversation today, I'd love to hear about a moment of joy or triumph from your journey, a time where you realized that you were successfully living what you teach in terms of blending your achievement with presence. What do you want our Scholarly Mama listeners to remember from that story?
We'll see if I can get through this story without crying. So last year, my daughter's grade 5 teacher had asked them to write about someone that they thought was successful. And they were to research and find things about this person and ask them questions if they were in their immediate environment. And my daughter picked me. And it was so funny, because sometimes we don't see that our children are watching, right? We talk about these things, and it was so interesting when she said, I picked you. And I was like, oh, I feel really honored that you'd pick me. Tell me why. And she said, you run your business, and you finished your master's, and you still took care of us and daddy, and you're always so joyful, and you just kind of take things so easy. And it reminded me about why it's so important for us as moms to be radically honest about the life that we want.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes we hide, and our families don't see the real us. And so there's friction sometimes again, but it's not because they're trying to be difficult. It's because the person we're presenting is not quite who we should be.
Mm-hmm.
And in that moment for me, it really came full circle, because one thing I'm starting to do is talk a lot about legacy as women. especially as moms. That's a foundation of the work that I do. I tend to attract a lot of first gen people. So the first in their family to break patterns, the first in their family to try new things. And legacy is so important to me because we've had this idea that legacy is about people who've died, but legacy is established while you're still alive.
Absolutely.
Legacy is the dust that settles in the room when you leave.
Yeah.
So for me in that moment, it was like, oh, this is the legacy. Why? Because my belief is that we can achieve anything we want and we don't have to sacrifice our children or our relationships or our health in the process.
Yes.
And for my daughter to see that, right? My daughter to see that and tell me that I'm successful. It was just like, oh, okay. That to me was the highlight. And so for the scholarly mamas who are listening, when you hear things like this, it's easy to just discount. It's easy to say, well, it works for them. That's their case. It's easy for us to make excuses as to why it won't work for you. And I did that too. Before I found coaching, before I really took myself seriously, before I experienced burnout, I was that mom too, where I was like, that's not for me. It's not going to be possible. But it's because I felt really comfortable living in the lie that I was telling myself. It was because I was comfortable living in that reality that nothing pushed me. I just didn't have to face the truth. But the moment I decided to tell myself the truth, the moment I decided to get real about what it is that I want in life, I had to commit to the journey. And it is still a journey for me. There are sometimes I wake up and I'm like, you know what? I could just not coach. I could just be at my job and things would be so easy because I just go to work, come back. But that's not the vision. The vision is to walk with as many women as I can to create experiences where women are thriving. Where women are thriving. We've been taught to survive for so long. We have to start thinking about thriving as women, not to wait till we're 50 and 60 and then we can breathe. You can breathe in your 20s and 30s and 40s. You can breathe while raising children.
Absolutely.
You don't have to wait till they leave your home. You don't have to wait to get a divorce before you breathe. Start to breathe now. And that is it for me. Tell yourself the truth. Don't make excuses. If you're making an excuse, commit to it and know that you don't get to complain because you have a choice. You don't get to complain. You just say, this is what I want. It's fine. I don't want it for me, and be okay with it. But if you know you still have that nagging feeling, you got to face that feeling and tell yourself the truth. As soon as you do that, things will start to show. The path will start to reveal itself.
You know what? Two things that have come to mind, two thoughts that popped into my head as you speak. The first was about legacy. I think that is so powerful, what you said. The idea that we don't need to wait till these things are over to create legacy. Legacy can be created right now. Legacy can be created every single day that you have an opportunity in this world to make a difference. No matter how big or small that is, that's building your legacy. And your kids are seeing that, they're watching that. You know, that is what legacy is about. This isn't about waiting till you die and have the nice tombstone and saying, oh, well, she worked hard, then she died.
Exactly.
This is, I'm sorry, but that's the truth. Have you ever seen, this is like a complete side note, but have you ever seen those? I've seen it somewhere, maybe on Instagram or something, an image of a tombstone. She was born, she worked hard, she died. No. There's a whole life in there that we have the opportunity, the gift of that life to live it to its fullest. And that is what we are here for. So the first thing that you said that really stood out for me was legacy. The other thing that you said that stood out for me is, you didn't use this word, but this is what has come up as you said it for me. And that is purpose. Like when you cannot let something go, like you said, you could not coach women. You could not do that. But there's a deeper purpose here. There's a deeper purpose here that calls you to do that work. I call that work purposeful work, right? To help women who feel like they are permanently in survival mode, to help them emerge from that and thrive in the capacities in which they are called to serve, whether that's in their work, in their careers, in their homes, in their jobs, in their academic stuff, whatever it is that they are called to serve in. You are helping them do that with grace and purpose. And honestly, for me, that's what purposeful work is all about. It really is not about us at all. This is about service, and this is about seeing other people and helping other people thrive. And I love that you're doing that purposeful work as well.
Thank you.
So where can our lovely listeners who are listening to this episode and who may want to follow you, may want to work with you, get in touch with you, where can they find you to connect with you online?
Great question. I'm at Unyime_Oguta on LinkedIn, Instagram. You can come find me. You can find me and learn more about working with me on my website, unyimeoguta.com.
I will leave links in the show notes, ladies. So make sure you check Unyime out. And it has been just such a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much. This was an amazing episode. So thank you so much for coming. And we look forward to seeing you online. Thank you.
Thank you. This was an honor. I appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning in to the Mrs. Mummy PhD podcast. I hope you've enjoyed the episode, and if you did and you want in on this movement, please head over to mrsmummyphd.com or scholarlymamas.com. If you want to do your PhD well without sacrificing yourself or those you love dearest, then you need your hands on my free training called the PhD with Purpose Webinar. When you join us inside Scholarly Mamas Explore, you'll get access to this free training and so much more. Remember, Mama, these are our journeys of becoming.